Now, expectations are high among Ethiopians following the election of Abiye Ahmed as the new chairperson of the ruling Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front. State-run television says the 180-member council of the ruling coalition chose Abiye to succeed Haile Mariam Desalegn as its chairperson. This means Abiye automatically becomes prime minister. He'll be sworn in on Monday after approval by Parliament. Abiye hails from the Oromo ethnic group. The ruling coalition has struggled to contain violent unrest since 2015, the biggest challenge to its hold on power since 1991. The government has twice imposed emergency rule, most recently after Haile Mariam's resignation, to contain unrest mainly in Oromia province. Abiye now has to implement the democratic reforms the government has promised and bridge divisions inside his ruling coalition. Now, for more on what can be expected of the new leadership in Addis Ababa, Tsedale Lemma, editor-in-chief and founder Addis Standard Magazine, joins me live via Skype from Frankfurt, Germany. Good evening, Tsedale.
Good evening, Vincent.
First, how optimistic are you that Abiye would make a difference in the coming days as a prime minister?
Let me begin by slightly correcting you how to pronounce his name. It's not Abiye, it's Abiy. Makes a difference, I hope. How optimistic I am? Very cautiously optimistic, because the way and the manner in which he came to assume the position now, it traces back its origin to the people's power, to the protest, and to some of the reform agendas that the party wanted to introduce as a response to popular protest against the government for the last 3+ years in the country. So because they recognized that unless something has changed, they were facing fundamental problems, and the legitimacy was draining so fast, they had to decide to bring in a change in leadership. Because of that, I am slightly or cautiously optimistic regarding the changes.
What about the significance of him being from the Oromia community?
Well, symbolically, it means a lot, because even though Ethiopia, some would argue that Ethiopia has had previously leaders that come from the Oromo community, this is the first time that the Oromo constituency is getting a prime minister that clearly identifies himself as an Oromo and also works for the Oromo cause in representing the Oromo in the state power. So this is symbolically huge, and the Oromia regional state is the one that started the protest and the one that still continues protesting against the sitting government. So this will have a symbolic impact. But I am not sure if it would mean anything unless Dr. Abiy is allowed to flex his muscle and to do the changes, the reform that they promised to bring in without impediment.
And actually, talking about that, how influential is the prime minister when you think about the power of this coalition, the party itself?
Well, if we come from the past 6 years, the Prime Minister's office has been made literally irrelevant. And this has been the trend since the days of the strongman, the late Meles Zenawi. That is when, 2012, that is when the office of the Prime Minister became essentially irrelevant. And that led to the failure of the regime, which the Prime Minister himself admitted to and resigned from. So Dr. Abiy has to reverse that. He has to make changes that the Prime Minister's office becomes relevant. He has to also make an assertion that he be the commander-in-chief of the army and not the other way around. So it's entirely up to what he's going to do and whether or not he will be allowed to do that. That would make the office of the Prime Minister relevant again.
We'll definitely be watching that. Mr. Tsedale, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
That's Tsedale Lemma, who's the editor-in-chief and founder at Addis Standard Magazine.